You don't go into a game without knowing the game plan, right? As a plan sponsor, you need to understand the rules of the game to provide your employees with a winning retirement plan. Let's jump into it. We've talked about fiduciary. Let's talk about fees. I think, our makeup friends, Estee Lauder, I think probably have one of the most expensive lawsuits. Not necessarily what they had in terms of payout, but they had breach of fiduciary duties, that excessive fees with record keeping and administrative costs. Now, they only had to pay out about $975,000 only, right? But this case went from 2014 to 2024. That's almost 10 years of dealing with attorneys. Now, if people are wondering why this litigation is going up, that might be part of it. These cases are taking a long time and they result in a lot of money. So I think we can all agree that it's problematic, but what are some of the most common mistakes that plan sponsors make when evaluating fees?
So I said it before, overconfidence. And, we've really seen, a lot of those kind of evils of the past, right, are going away. 408B2, that regulation that came out years ago that now requires full fee disclosure. No more, your plan is free, but we're not going to tell you why it's free or how it got to be free. So I think
nothing is free.
Nothing is free. No, we all know that. And I think, intuitively people know that things aren't free, but it's the overconfidence in fully understanding your fees. So maybe you know what your fees are, but how exactly are they calculated? How exactly are they collected? So are your fees calculated pro rata or per capita? Is it an asset-based fee? And then
can you explain for anybody who might not know what those two terms mean?
So let's say there's really two basic ways that a plan provider is gonna calculate your fees. Asset-based, so it might be 10, 20, 30 basis points, a fraction of a percent against the assets of your plan. Or they might say that it's a per participant fee. So we're going to charge 50, 60, 80, whatever the number is, dollars per person that is in the plan with an active balance.
Okay, so which one is the right one, which is a question we get asked all the time.
That's right. There's not a right answer, right? But the answer is understanding it, right? Understanding how is it calculated, and then on the flip side, how is it being applied? Because we could get in all the mathematics and all the weeds of it, but suffice to say, if you're saying, all right, we're going to calculate the fee on a per head basis, and that turns out to be $10,000. But then we're going to apply it pro rata, meaning that if you have 1% of the total balance of the plan, you get 1% of the fee.
Okay, so I'm seeing my committee members as you're going through all this. I understand this. This is something we get excited when we find better solutions for. But this is about the time, especially some of my HR professionals kind of roll their eyes and look and are completely overwhelmed. So for anybody listening to this that just is like, what? Swirl information. I don't know. I don't want to be responsible for this. What can you tell them?
Get help. We that's what we do, right? But I think, joking aside, I think it comes down to, spending a couple of minutes. I know it's painful going through the weeds of it, but it's having a good illustration that shows you what your options are, both how it's being done and how maybe it could more reasonably be done.
And who can they go to for this? Do they go, if they're looking at their record keeper fees, do they ask their record keeper to provide that information?
So when it comes to just the facts, right, I think, yes, you can ask your record keeper to get the facts, right, on how is our fee calculated, how are we currently applying it if we're having our employees pay for that fee, and applying it to plan assets. You can get those facts. Now, understanding the facts is maybe something that's a little bit different. And that's where we say, if you can read all of those notices and you can read all of the disclosures and have absolutely good clarity on all of it, then great. If you don't have absolute clarity, then get help and go outside of your firm. And, when we'll get into, benchmarking and things in a little bit here, but I think it's just making sure that you get help to really fully understand what those fees are.
By getting help, I think one of the things we've learned with working with our clients is that a lot of them don't completely understand all of those nuances. And so having the advisor like ourselves or the record keeper bring that in and actually have a training with the committee seems to be a really great way to help drill down those specifics, because even from year to year, as you do these, they might not remember because they're not focused on this every day. This is not the priority of their business. They have a business to run.
Sure.
Right.
For sure.
So really, they keep saying fees and fees and fees. How much does this really impact the participant in the overall income outcome of the plan?
So, of course, fees are critical. They're absolutely critical in every aspect of our lives, right? It doesn't matter whether it's your interest rate on your mortgage or how much you paid for your car or whatever it is. Fees are critical. And so when it comes to accumulating money towards retirement, the important thing to remember is the first dollar that you put in is the one that's going to be worth the most whenever you retire, whether that's 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 40 years from now, you're earlier in your career. So imagine if instead of putting in $1, it gets knocked down to 90 cents, or it gets knocked down to 80 or 70 cents. So that dollar that you're putting in, when you apply a fee to it, the amount of fee being applied to it has exponential impacts as you go down the pike. Now, fees are necessary. Again, nothing's free. So it's okay to have fees, but it's very important to understand what are those fees, and it can have a very big impact on everyone. And anyone who's a plan sponsor that's listening to this, you're a participant too. So those fees are affecting how much money you're going to have when you get down the road. So by having the right processes and having the right evaluations and making sure that your fees are reasonable, all of those things will ultimately benefit everyone in the plan to have better outcomes for retirement.
But when, you have an advisor, they put it into the plan, that should be it, right? Everything passed mustered when you put it into the plan, the fees should be fine, right? Because fees never change, right?
That's right. That's right. So I think, when it comes down, it's, we'll move into, talking about benchmarking, right? So I think it's very, very, very important to benchmark those fees. They do change over time. Hopefully, if your plan is growing, your fees are going down because you're getting more economies of scale.
Well, and especially the fund fees. The record keeping, they have gotten to be pretty good at bringing that information to you, as we've really brought their fees down over the years, over and over again. But the funds are the ones that I feel like are too ever changing. You have to we have to look at them on a quarterly basis really to keep up.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Okay. And so when benchmarking, we're looking at that record keeping aspect. Okay. We talked about it before. So do you have the record keeper benchmark their own fees?
So that's one of those funny things. All the record keepers out there offer the service to benchmark their fees. I always find that a little curious, just because, hey, lo and behold, look,
conflict of interest
right.
there.
We benchmarked our own fees, and the results that we gave you are that we're, right in the middle, or we're right in the X percentile, and it's a justification of where that fee is. Now, I'm not saying every record keeper is out there, just trying to justify their fees. We've seen them do these benchmarking exercises on themselves.
And I think they use some third parties as well, but it'd be hard to explain to a judge, well, the person we were paying, we let them tell us that they were competitive.
Right.
I just don't feel like that doesn't pass the smell test to me.
And that's why, we've had, potential clients come to us and say, well, we want you to run an advisor search for us. And I'm like,
sure,
well,
guess who wins?
yeah. I said, well, it'll be kind of funny because I'm going to tell you what the results are going to be. We're the best solution out there. So we don't run advisor searches because that is a conflict of interest, right? So same thing, you want to make sure that no matter what you're talking about, benchmarking fees, doing RFPs, whatever the situation is, the person that is doing that search shouldn't be one of the folks that ultimately is involved in the outcome.
Well, in all of these, ERISA, being the largest law on the books, is always so crystal clear, and it says reasonable fees. What exactly does reasonable fees mean to make sure that you don't end up in one of those lawsuits?
Right. And of course, we've both been asked that question repeatedly,
over and over.
Whether it's in conferences or whether it's by clients. There is no definition of reasonable, right? You just have to be able to justify why your fees are what they are. Are you getting the right value for those fees? So you don't have to be the cheapest. If you get let's say 5 quotes, you don't have to look at it and go, all right, we're going with provider A because they're the cheapest. If provider B, C, D is a higher fee, but is going to give you better service, more employee meetings, on-site review with your account manager. It could be additional services that you very much need. Maybe you have a complicated plan. You've got 5 different companies that are spread across the country, and you need to be able to do all the different cross-testings and different just specifics of those plans that need someone that has a little bit more service and might have a slightly higher fee. Talk about cars, the difference between buying a Lamborghini or buying a Honda. Hopefully there's a little bit of additional value or something that comes with paying for a very expensive car. It's that same kind of concept. And what are you going to use that car for? So what are you going to use that provider for?
Well, and I'm guessing if you're trying to make the Lamborghini seem reasonable, you probably should have some documentation to go along with it to explain your thought process. If you have to drive 110 to work,
right.
You're going to need the Lamborghini, right?
Right. So I think it's just we just say it over and over again. It's all about the documentation. It's all about the process. It's being able to show that there is a reason that you are where you are and that you're paying the fees that you're paying. So just saying, well, I don't know, is probably the most dangerous answer that you can ever give. You don't want to be in a position to be back on your heels to say, I'm not really sure why we're still here. I'm not really sure why our fees are what they are. Or,
we haven't looked at them in 10 years.
I don't know when the last time we did the review of our fees were. So
I think that reasonable, if you can show that it's competitive in the marketplace and you're getting the value, I really feel like, that's kind of the guidance we've given a lot of our clients. It's just that competitive nature. You're not so expensive, and, the lowest is not always the best, right, especially for your culture. How often should you benchmark? That is the question I feel like we get on a daily basis.
Yeah. And of course, when we're doing conferences and workshops, every single one of those workshops, someone's hand goes up and says, how often should we be benchmarking and documenting? Industry average, I would say, is about every 3 years. It's a good idea to take a look.
Does that mean you have to transition every 3 years?
No, doing a fee benchmarking doesn't at all mean that you have to transition to a different provider, right? It just says, all right, we're taking a look and saying, are our fees reasonable based on where the market is? I'd also say benchmark anytime you have a plan event. Are you divesting, part of your company where you're losing some employees, acquiring another company? Those plan events, absolutely, you want to do a benchmarking.
Now, benchmarking, because I also get this as a question, is benchmarking really doing an RFP? Because I don't know if you've noticed, people do not like to do RFPs.
No, you can just do a benchmarking on fees alone, and without going the whole way out to an RFP where it's the encyclopedia of information. We actually have a great process called Invitation to Compete. It's a patented process that's a kind of a great blend, very easy approach that puts the focus on your plan sponsor, on you as a plan sponsor, rather than going all the way to a full RFP or just saying, give me your best price.
Let's jump into the Invitation to Compete.
So there's kind of 2 sides to really any search, right? You've got plan services and you've got plan fees. Every plan sponsor that I've talked to, if they want to evaluate services, immediately goes to RFP. Our patented process of Invitation to Compete is, we work with that client and say, tell us what the pain points are, right? Yes, we're going to do the fees. We're going to look at that. But, again, talking about reasonable fees, you have to be able to justify why the fees are what they are. So our process is give us a couple of the pain points, give us a couple of things that if you had a perfect world scenario, no provider out there is perfect. Let's just talk about what those pain points are. And then we put the focus on you. It's not just going out to the market and saying, tell me all of the things that you can do. Tell me about the white space on your web pages and about your amazing planning tools and all of the things that you can do for a plan sponsor. It's saying, my plan sponsor needs this. These are the things that they're worried about.
Right. Because, we talk to a lot of great record keepers all the time, but there usually is one record keeper that's going to be great for you, right? That has really the niche or the focus that's going to line up better with your organization. So I really do think Invitation to Compete has been able to match those people together. Maybe we didn't we joke that it was like it was kind of like a dating service at the beginning, speed dating. That was what we were joking that Invitation to Compete was like.
Right.
Great. So what about the capabilities of the record keeper? Are there any problems that come up that you can't address in that process?
No, and I think one of the neat things about invitation to compete, when you're talking about what are the problems that you have as a plan sponsor, and that's a pretty easy conversation. Most sponsors know where their pain points are, right? We don't get enough service, we don't ever hear from anyone, or our testing always takes too long, or whatever the situation is. When a lot of plans have very unique kind of twists and turns. I talked about whether you have 5 companies across the country,
multiple divisions,
all of the things that make record keeping a little quirky. So it's going out to the market and talking to a handful of different providers with those pain points. And then you can even stay with your current provider, but implement some of those great ideas that you're getting from other providers. Now,
creative solutions from a lot of different experts.
That's right. It's and also then along with it comes the competitive bidding, right? It's the competitive prices, and you can leverage those other prices and those other capabilities, even with your current provider, to get the lower price, get better service, and not have to move your plan.
So what is the ultimate goal? What should they really look at from doing these processes?
We talk about documentation, of course. It's always great to document that you've just looked at the market. Lower prices are great. Competition is better. So it's getting those firms to compete for your business. And, you are the client, and you can go out to that market and say, we want to know what the best price is for the right service. So we've documented that our fees are reasonable, and we're doing our due diligence as a fiduciary.
Actually, I'm really excited how well Invitation to Compete, every client we've used it with has really enjoyed it and been like, this is the easiest RFP I've ever done. So hopefully we can do that for more people as well.